But management would also have to explain their remote work decisions in writing, which starts to create a paper trail so the union can make sure the rules are being fairly and consistently applied across all individuals.
I guess that is a step in the right direction. The next time they reach negotiations, they have all of this data and they say, hey, look how this is not being fairly distributed. Then maybe they could bargain for more work from home protections. I guess the optimist in me is like, wow, I'm glad that this is even on the table, and it might continue to be on the table from here on out as part of the labor movement. It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? PSAC, those beloved bureaucrats that we all depend on, have reached a deal with the federal government. Hashtag not all PSAC workers. Only 120,000 of them have reached a tentative deal. So it's not even for real yet, but it is breaking news as of today. That means there's still 35,000 CRA workers who are still on strike. It is tax season, so solidarity with them. They can take their time making sure I paid the right amount of money. The question is it good news, or has the strike kind of gone out with a fizzle? Unfortunately, I am a little disappointed. I'm not mad, all right? I'm just disappointed. It still has to be voted on. Right. So it still has to be voted on by the membership of the union, but the union leaders have struck this deal tentatively. My guess is that they're going to take it, although I think they should hold out personally. So they have 12.6% in compounded wage increases and a $2,500 lump sum payment. My understanding is that it doesn't address remote work. Monday's announcement also suggests the union was unable to secure its demand that work from home rules be included in the collective agreement. So I think this is why they should continue to strike. Honestly, yes, wages are important, and I think they've done an okay job in that regard. They got more than what they were going to get, but I think the autonomy of being able to work from home is a huge deal. And failing to get that as part of the collective agreement is, in my opinion, kind of a failure. They could have led the way for workers all over Canada to get this deal and have the ability to work from home if they so choose. I think having that autonomy over your own work is what the ruling class, is what bosses, it's what managers are scared of. And I want them to be scared. So I'm a little disappointed. They should also support Revenue Canada workers. I agree. If 35,000 workers are still out there striking, you should be out there with them. How do you say solidarity? Obviously, there's different unions within the union. That's why this is happening. But I think, why not just hold out? It's called solidarity for a reason, right? So there are some details here that PSAC has tweeted out. The Treasury Board workers, we got a deal. Wage increase comparison. So I guess like this is some tangible information and goes to show that the bar was moved a little bit by going on strike. The red is the tentative agreement, and the blue is essentially what the agreement might have been had they not gone on strike. Goes to show that, going on strike, flexing your power is a pretty good idea. You get more if you use your power. Even though I disagree and I don't think that this is enough, it's better than nothing. And we should be working to unionize all parts of the Canadian workforce because you get a better deal. And that's all we really want as workers, is it not? New and improved remote work language. I don't really like this title, this subheading, because it really means that this is not guaranteed. It's new and improved language. It doesn't secure those privileges being turned into rights, as they were so often saying. PSAC members will now have access to additional protection when subject to arbitrary decisions about remote work. We have also negotiated language in a letter of agreement that requires managers to assess remote work requests individually, not by group, and provide written responses that will allow members and PSAC to hold the employer accountable to equitable and fair decision-making on remote work. What does this mean? If you're like, hey, I'm working from home, and they say no, they have to give you a written reason why. You can say, hey, how come my written reason is different than somebody else's written reason? And you can essentially hold them accountable in that way. Doesn't sound that different than what's currently going on, but maybe formalizing this process a little bit more so that people can at least document how remote work is being allocated, why it's being given to some people and not to others. If I were a PSAC member and voting on this tentative deal, I would probably hold out. And not only just for PSAC workers, but because this is a big deal. This is a big deal for workers all across Canada. We need to guarantee remote work. That is part of our ability to have autonomy as workers, to save money as workers. Why would you drive? Why would you take transit when you can do the exact same job from home? And you save also a lot of time. It's time and money. And at the end of the day, that's all we're fighting over. That's all the job is. It's giving time for money. All right, let's try to learn a little bit more. We got CBC. We got Andrew. I want to say Andrew Gang, but I know it's not. This is a different type of gang. But this is CBC. They just released this video 46 minutes ago. So, this is as good as it's going to get in terms of us learning what's going on here.
So this is the Service Canada office that I was standing outside for a few days last week, and that we saw Service Canada workers marching outside of for more than a week. So let's go and march where they were marching, because they are no longer there. The strike is over.
I mean, it's tentatively over. This is jumping the gun a little bit. Andrew Chang, damn it. I wanted to say Andrew Yang. Okay, but we don't have Yang Gang in Canada. This is Chang Gang, everyone.
They have a deal. After 12 full days off the job.
Tentatively.
The largest nationwide public sector strike we have seen in decades comes to an end.
Breaking news from home this morning. We got the announcement around 2 o'clock Eastern that there is a tentative deal in one of the largest strikes in Canadian history. The Public Service Alliance of Canada has reached that tentative deal with the federal government for more than 120,000 workers at the Treasury Board.
So the PSAC strike is over, and the marching orders are get back to work as of 9 a.m. Eastern this morning. But just because
9 a.m. Eastern this morning? What? I thought they still have to vote on it. I thought it's still tentative. How do you get back to work when you haven't even voted on it? I guess you could always go back on strike, right?
the strike is over doesn't mean the story is over. Oh no. So what does this tentative agreement actually mean? What was tentatively agreed to, and what are the loose ends? And spoiler alert,
Yes, tell
there are
us.
a couple.
Tell us, Andrew Chang.
So, first thing, it's really important to be clear about is that this news only applies to most, not all, of the workers who are on strike. Because with the Public Service Alliance of Canada, the PSAC negotiations, there were actually two main bargaining units with separate demands. So there were 120,000 Treasury Board employees, which covers, so many federal jobs from passport processors, immigration employees, the people who dole out your pension payments, RCMP, lighthouse workers, Coast Guard, food inspectors. So
I did see a picture of like a lone lighthouse worker on strike. Iconic.
that sort of thing. It's a massive number of workers, and it's why the strike was followed so closely by Canadians. So they've reached an agreement. The holdouts, Canada Revenue Agency, a smaller group of about 35,000 people who, most notably process your tax returns, and yes,
That's still a lot of people. 35,000? Come on.
it is tax season. They're not included in this agreement. They're still on strike. Clear? Okay. So, what's the deal? Well, let's start with wages, because that was a big sticking
All right, we're learning. We're learning. Let's go.
point. So you'll recall the government's offer was to give a 9% raise over 3 years. And that would have covered 2021, 2022, and 2023 as a way of
I love this whiteboard vibe right now.
compensating for how high inflation has been. And, averaged out, you can think of that as 3% per year. The union was looking for 13.5% and averaged out over the same period. And averaged out, that works out to closer to 4.5%.
Yes.
per year. Bear with me with this squeaky marker. So
I love they can edit this. Like it's funny to me they don't edit this down, but okay.
both sides have now agreed to this instead. And just hold on while I do this here. So for 2021, a 1.5% increase. 2022, a 4.75% increase. 2023, a 3% increase. And 2024, 2.25. If you add all of that up, that equals 11.5%.
Over 4 years though. I mean 13.5 over 3 years, very different than 11.5 over 4 years. So is this a victory? I don't know.
Ta-da! All right. If you look over here, the total looks like they met in the middle, but they didn't really, because what they agreed to, as you can see, is now a 4-year deal. Now the government says this averages out, and they're right on this, it averages out to less than 3% per year. So, they would likely frame this as a win. The Treasury Board president calls it fair, competitive, and reasonable. But interestingly, the union also frames this as a win because they say there's also, if we change this 3 to 3.5%, they say there's also a 0.5% wage adjustment in 2023. The government calls this an allowance, so we don't exactly know what that is, and we won't until we can actually read the full agreement. But the union also says this, that the total adds up to 12.6%. And this is torquing the numbers a little bit, but it's true. So it's true if you take compounding into account, and I'll explain what I mean. So, in 2022, employees are getting a 4.75% raise on an improved salary thanks to the previous year's increase. So if you do that kind of math, that compounding, it does indeed add up to 12.6% as a raise, compounded until the end of the 2024 fiscal year. I say it's torquing because we haven't been talking about negotiations in quite that way. We've just been looking at the increases each year in isolation. So, broadly, let's just call it a 12% raise over 4 years, with an extra year of certainty equaling an extra year of stability. But that's not all. The union has also secured a one-time lump sum payment for its members of $2,500 for each employee, which is pensionable, meaning it factors into pension calculations once a person retires. Then there are the protections around remote work. So, the
Okay, actually, I feel like that was a great explanation. So shout out to Andrew Chang. Chang gang, let's go.
union wanted working from home written into their contract. So employees would have more options when it comes to remote work. The government saw that as something that should stay under management control. Like
Ooh.
roughly half the week you come in, half the week you stay home, end of story. But a couple of little twists now. So according to the union, the government now has to, according to the agreement, assess each case individually instead of by group. So, that kind of gives individuals a little more flexibility instead of getting lumped into these sort of sweeping edicts.
All right, I guess if you were like a single parent or something, maybe they would view that as something that they would give you a lot more leeway with. I don't know.
But management would also have to explain their remote work decisions in writing, which starts to create a paper trail so the union can make sure the rules are being fairly and consistently applied across all individuals.
I guess that is a step in the right direction. Like if the next time they reach negotiations, they have all of this data and they say, hey, look how this is not being fairly distributed, then maybe they could bargain for more work from home protections. I guess the optimist in me is like, wow, I'm glad that this is even on the table, and it might continue to be on the table from here on out as part of the labor movement.
Then there are some other things, and literally hundreds of other things, but wages and remote work were two of the biggest sticking points. So where does that leave us? What are the loose ends? Well, the big one that I mentioned off the top that Canada Revenue Agency employees, they are still on strike. They were asking for a much larger wage increase, a more than 20% raise over 3 years. And they're also apparently hitting a big roadblock in negotiations where it comes to how much remote work each side thinks should be written into the contracts. So until that gets resolved, expect further delays and a growing backlog when it comes to tax season and getting your tax returns back. But also, everything I just mentioned, it's only a tentative agreement. And here's what I mean. The negotiators may have reached a deal, but union members still have to vote yes for it to be official. Now, sometimes it happens where the negotiators will agree to a deal and the union will actually recommend members vote no. That's happened before. In this case, the union recommends its members vote yes, suggesting that they believe this is the best deal they'll be able to get. But it's also happened in recent past where union members still vote no, even when the union tells them to vote yes. So
I say vote no. Why not? Flex. That's like the only power you have. You might as well flex it, right?
all I'm trying to say is that until we see the results of the vote, this story ain't over. In the next few days, we are expecting to see the full text of the agreement. And then shortly thereafter, union members will get a chance to vote online. So once all of that happens, end of story. Except, of course, the Canada Revenue Agency employees still without a deal and your tax returns still in limbo. And I suppose we should not forget the slew of other unions, right? Like both public and private unions who are looking at these negotiations as a potential framework for their own. So maybe the story isn't over at all.
All right. It ain't over till it's over. Wow, that was actually a really handy explanation. I know I once criticized these segments because I felt like they feel astroturfed. Like the fake library and whatever. If it's like in a studio, but the studio is made to feel like someone's home. I was kind of making fun of that vibe. But at the same time, I actually think they're pretty useful in explaining. So I know the CBC is really unpopular, but I mean, hey, I just feel like I learned something. So I guess part of my concern might be that they are framing it a bit too favorably for the unions, when I personally think that the workers, they've come this far. Why not hold out for more? The federal government has shown that they're willing to move the needle, and why not move it a little further in your direction? Also, I think solidarity is really important. So while 35,000 workers are out there still on strike, you should be acting in solidarity with them, right? And even if they come back to the table in a week with the same deal, but the CRA workers get a better deal, it would have been worth it, in my humble opinion. Because at the end of the day, when some of us are able to win, then over the long run, that means we're all winning together. And the nature of this is to use your collective bargaining to strike a better deal. Why not make sure you don't miss the next video by liking, commenting, subscribing, and ringing the bell? Thank you so much for watching. It's my homie 2 Taro. Peace.